It's just so spontaneous. The spontaneous YouTube clips are usually the best. All right, so what we need to do is introduce everybody. Hello, everyone. I have two very special friends and guests here. Let's go ahead. Let's get in. Move this chair closer. And move this chair closer. All right, let's introduce ourselves. Let's introduce ourselves.
Hello, I'm Walter. Hola, me llamo Chris.
And I'm Sanjay. And it's nice to have you. And today we're going to be talking about finances. Let's get a little closer still. And so there are a lot of students that might be watching this, or people just in general on YouTube that might be watching this. This is not going to replace any professional outside advice that you would be seeking. But so we're not liable for anything that you do or don't do. And my financial advisor, I had a meeting the other day, and she said you should put something together and teach what you've done so far.
Yes.
Obviously, we all have a long way to be going, right? And so I meet with her every 6 months to learn. I pick her brain. Like, I'll come in with questions. And kind of that's what we're doing. And we had a discussion the other day, and you guys wanted to talk more about this stuff. So we're learning from each other. We'll talk about books. We'll talk about philosophies. We'll talk about lifestyles in this video, and we're going to talk about a lot. So where should we start? So maybe you could find something.
Start with our first bullet point.
Let's get close. Okay, books?
Yes.
So good books on finances?
Yes, books, magazines, what would you recommend? Forbes.
Forbes magazine?
Forbes, Business Weekly,
Money.
Wall Street Journal. Are those good sources?
Yes. Money magazine. There's Inc. So reading, they say you want to read 1 hour a day in the field, right? So, and it doesn't just have to be finances. For example, if you're building your career, that's going to build your income. I always tell my nursing students, for example, if you're going to be an RN, that's great. But my father, who hires nurse practitioners in his offices, he says, tell them they can be nurse practitioners, earn more money, have more. It's not that you're working less, but you have more flexible hours. You're making a greater return. So one of the things that we need to keep in mind while we're reading these success magazines and books is that we got to build ourselves professionally. So it's not just the money. Because the research shows that if somebody wins the lottery, 80% of lottery winners go broke, right? In 2 years.
Yes, 2-3 years.
They don't have the financial education, that's part of it, but they didn't have anything that generated that, like by their own efforts. I mean, they did buy the lottery tickets.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we have to keep in mind is there is this idea of money, build business, career, and we got to find multiple ways to build money and have a better education life. Is that making sense?
Yes.
So then we have a lot of books too that we could talk about. Brian Tracy, who I've assisted in 2 events, as a volunteer, 3 seminars on DVD. There was a seminar company in Detroit, they invited me. And he is amazing in terms of his books, and he has a lot on success, money, time management, and he helped me a lot. Like his work, if I could credit one person in terms of like helping me, that would be his stuff. Because I listen to Wayne Dyer, all those people, right? They're wonderful. And all of these people help, but he gives you a lot of practical things in terms of time management, career management. Another guy is a guy by the name of Seth Godin. So a lot of his books, he has one called Bootstrapping. So Godin is Godin, right? And he's the one that helped me with, for example, applying for online positions or live positions. He has a philosophy that you need to build a relationship. If I don't know who you are, you're not going to accept my cover letter and resume as readily from the pile.
Yeah.
He says that you should have 6 degrees of, 6 points of contact with the person before you ask, if you give your cover letter and resume. For me, that is huge. So a lot of Joe Vitale, Vitale, of course.
What's the name before that one?
Oh, sure, Seth Godin.
Seth Vitale.
Joe Vitale. And then V-I, he spells it V-I-T-A-L-E. And basically, I bumped into him in Asheville on a road trip with another friend. And I love his work. He talks about the law of attraction. He talks about how you attract at a deeper level the state of consciousness, essentially where you are.
Yeah.
So in other words, and who else talks about this is there's a guy by the name of Bob Proctor. And of course, Proctor we spell P-R-O-C-T, I want to say E-R, Bob Proctor. And he talks about The Science of Getting Rich. So he has a DVD at that same seminar company. You could order it there. But there's also a Science of Getting Rich program you can get on YouTube. You can watch it for free. I've seen it before. And for me, that he was huge in terms of my philosophy and multiple streams of income. Basically, he says there's 3 ways you can earn money. You could have a job, which is what most people do.
Yeah.
You can have investments. That's the next level up. Because you think about it, your money's starting to work for yourself. And then number 3, you want to have it's starting to work for itself and it's starting to help you. But number 3 is multiple streams of income. You've heard it MSI, right? So multiple streams of income is the secret because you can't obviously multiply yourself. In terms of your human efforts, yourself. And he's not a big fan of burning yourself to the ground.
Yeah.
So this is a hard one because a lot of people say, well, if I work 60 to 80 hours a week, then I can be successful and earn all this money and do whatever. Everyone can.
You could. And
But what
be a
happens?
sacrifice of your own health and mental and physical health.
And it's not worth it, is it?
Not in the long run.
Yeah, see, in the short term, like I was counseling a student, and as you guys may know, like I was helping her with time management last night. And we were talking about a success plan. We laid one out for an hour and 15 minutes. And she's helping to support her husband and her family. She literally can get about 4 to 5 hours of sleep. And I said, is there any way you can increase it to 7? And she really doesn't know how yet. So we looked at what she could cut, right? Because don't you agree that to build our success, to sustain it, we got to be all there. You got to be mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually balanced. So the success needs to come at a price that's not sacrificing our relationships. How many people do you know are getting successful at the expense of relationships? You can be successful without that happening. Unfortunately, with school, going back to school and doing other things, there is a time commitment. And you have to sacrifice. I know what it's like going back to graduate school several times, for different degrees. And you do have to eat into your time, both personal time and other time. But that's a long-term investment. So this goes to another person, and you guys know about this, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? Robert Kiyosaki. And Kiyosaki, everyone knows how to spell, Kiyosaki, I believe, right? Is that right? C-K-I, or A-K-I.
I'm not familiar with him, actually.
Okay, so Robert Kiyosaki, tell us. Walter, get closer so they can see.
I'm just familiar with the title of the book. When I was in high school, I was in the student ambassador program for Hughes Symbols. That's my alma mater for high school. And so,
Speak a little louder. Please.
My one of the counselors for the ambassador group, she was very money conscious and money wise, and so I just saw her read this book one day, and I actually, what's that about? And she told me it'd be a good read if I went to, in life, I want to build on my finances. That would be a good place to start, was to read that book.
It's an
So
excellent.
I've heard of it, and then I know he's had seminars in the city too.
Oh yes.
And I just never made it out to him.
He's excellent. And Chris, you were curious about this too?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go ahead and push this here. Let's get closer, guys. I know that the volume might be a little soft, and I apologize. I didn't realize. So what it is, maybe a little closer. So he basically talks about how you have appreciating assets and let the appreciating assets pay for other things. So let me give you an example. Whether we're talking about real estate and rental income, right? Or we're talking about somebody taking $100,000 and getting 9% on that. If you use the $9,000 that you generate into another business or something, or reinvest it, that's allowing the asset to grow. So what happens is one of the greatest secrets is a lot of people that are saving and investing, and including one of my millionaire friends from down in Florida, one of the things that, and this is going to get into lifestyle, we got to have very clear focal points for our lifestyle. My philosophy is that you buy material items that share in the experience with other people. So that's how I purchase things. A pool table, breakfast table, a dining table. Like for me, that's a big one. Other people want to have like a car collection. There's nothing wrong with that. But should the car collection be what comes first in building one's wealth? If somebody's going to invest and trade the cars or use them as collectors, maybe, right? But otherwise, no, right?
If you did that, would that fall under another income stream?
Well, yes, it would be another income stream if they're flipping the cars or something, right? Exactly, but what he's saying, what Robert Kiyosaki is saying is he talks about his Porsches that he has. He lets his investments in real estate and other things, businesses, pay for that. The dividends or the yields from that. So the idea is to want less, but find a way to increase your income, to build your lifestyle, but not necessarily. You can do it materially. Bob Proctor is huge on this. He says, listen, don't find a way to make less. Find a way to make more to build the lifestyle you want. Is that making sense? So this is a double-edged sword because we can be wasteful. Because you have the money, you can be wasteful because you say, well, I have the money, I can do it. Buy another car, buy another thing. But the problem is, if you invest more in depreciating assets, then you don't have as much to show for it by that end of that particular year. Another thing that people do, and Kiyosaki talks about this and other people talk about this, is you take certain things and so for example, you take your tax money and you spend it in relation to your expenses. So why he talks about a home business, I'm a big person, I always talk about this too, a 1099, a home-based business or something, independent contractor, because anything that you're doing in service of that business, yes, you can write it off in your taxes. A big example for this is even finding work. You can document that I sent out letters, made phone calls, I used this phone, I used it for this percentage. Ideally, it's better to have a fixed line for it or something. What's going to happen is you eat into that tax money from your W-2 job. So that's a good starting point. I always recommend to my students that when I'm allowed to, I don't want to, we do have financial units and things like that. But again, it doesn't replace any advice outside of what we're talking about here. I tell them that you should have a full-time job and a part-time job. Never, ever put your eggs in one basket. Never have just one stream. I'm not, because you'll automatically get ahead by having one more job. So you could have a third job. I know a gal right now. She has 3 jobs, and she's doing very well. She doesn't want to take on a 4th job because what's going to happen? She's feeling burned out on both ends. But she's doing so well. She's earning so much money that she started to look at real estate. How old is she? She's 20, 21.
What does she do specifically?
She was working at a cafe at the gym. She's doing dog sitting. And now she can make dog sitting in just half the time, more than she's making in the cafe. Just as an example. She works at a shelter, and she got a job at a clothing store. So she's trying to, it's mainly 3, but she's going to probably leave one of them. But the point I'm making is, she's getting entrepreneurial. So the secret is, how do you, and Brian Tracy talks about this, what are the top earners doing in your field? So you got to look at what the top people are doing. And if there isn't a role model, you got to create one. Or you got to find one that is kind of doing something similar, or just kind of take calculated risks and do it. But I think finding mentors is very important. Am I making sense? Finding mentors on this is very important. And what we're trying to say here is we want to make sure that we're successful in our careers. Okay? So I think, for example, in academia, in teaching, what we know that I know, but the microphone we got because of the blender I was just trying to say. We know that a PhD can help, right? And so I'm getting an advanced degree. It's going to open more doors in terms of more people are interested in you. If I can pay you the same amount as somebody who has an advanced degree but at a lower level, I'm going to take the person in some cases, or majority of the cases, that has the advanced degree. So we want to give ourselves a competitive edge in our jobs. We've got to build ourselves to where we're earning more money. Is that making sense?
And on that note, what's the best way to market yourself? Since it's just more often now you are competing against people with more experience, more credentials and accolades to their name. So how do you market yourself to have a competitive chance against them?
So Chris, you're asking a great question. So remember we were talking about this too in the career development courses I used to teach. You have to find a way, and Walter, does this make sense? You have to find a way to make, there are 3 reasons you've got to have a competitive edge. I suggest this. And having hired online and having hired live, what I can tell you is, this is what I can tell you. That you've got to have 3 reasons that somebody should hire you over somebody else. It doesn't mean that you're better than somebody, but you're more interesting to the person that's interested in hiring you. I'll give you a quick example. There was one guy at a college where I was teaching that I wanted to hire. We went through dozens of applications. My boss, I was a senior member, and my boss would send me the applications, resumes, cover letters, all these things. And he said, review them. And there was one guy, for example, for one position that stood out to me. He was in the military. He had a master's in divinity, master's in psychology, and he had a lot of life experience. I said, we've got to bring him from Florida. Turns out that didn't work out. He ended up staying in Florida, but I sold my boss on him. I sold the other senior member because I saw at least 3 things that separated him from all the other people in the class. And that's all it takes. I don't remember his GPA for his master's degree, but the idea is if I'm going to hire you as a cook, you mentioned, you go ahead and say to the audience what you do.
The way my closing spiel for any interview is basically tell the chef that while I'm not the best cook around, we'll be getting my best when I'm on the job. Whether or not it works out, that's up to heaven. But at the end of the day, I know I tried my best.
And that's all you can do to try your best, right? Yeah, one of the things, and what do you say, Walter?
Basically, in the interview process, what I like to do when I'm presented with those questions, I present my strengths and I acknowledge my weaknesses. So I'll make it known what my strengths are, and then I'll acknowledge what my weaknesses are. Pretty much like the sandwich. I'll give you my strengths, I'll acknowledge my weaknesses, and then in closing is when I kind of like, give like the final blow as to why I'm more hireable than my other applicants.
If I may cut in, so, would you say it's better to minimize weaknesses or openly acknowledge them? By minimize, I mean kind of, what everybody does, kind of embellish things and whatnot.
No, not necessarily. What I do is like I can only speak for myself. But like when I'm in the interview process, it's like in the interview, it's all about me. It's about me and you. It's about you have a job, I'm looking for a job, I want this job. So when I'm talking about myself, like I said, I tell you what I'm good at, I tell you what I'm not good at, and then in closing, I'll tell you like how I intend to build upon it and work on it that way. While I'm here, while I'm on your clock, while I'm taking time, this is what I intend to do to get better at those things. And I can confidently say there hasn't been a job that I've applied for that I wanted that I haven't gotten this far.
Excellent. Look at that. Great advice. Yeah, so thank you, Walter and Chris. And I think this goes back to the idea that we want to make sure that we minimize our weaknesses but show how they're hidden strengths. So in interviews, you always want to show, I have a tendency to double check, triple check, and what that does, it slows me down at times.
Exactly.
Yes.
I'm the exact same.
You say that. You say that like that, right? And then they're really thinking, the recruiter's thinking in his or her mind that that's a good thing. You see, it's a hidden weakness, but it's there's a hidden strength.
Because you're not done right. Yeah, exactly.
So that's the kind of weakness you want to bring up. But you never want to say to somebody that you're impulsive.
Doesn't that come across as deliberately just trying to hide a flaw? Like some people will say, I've interviewed a couple people, and they say my biggest weakness is I'm a perfectionist. Or that, like you just said, actually I heard that when I was at Waffle House, that my biggest weakness is I take a while to double check and triple check things. To me, that says the exact opposite. That says you're just really kind of slow. You're just trying to butter it up.
Well, there is that possibility, definitely, right? There is that possibility, but as far as buttering up goes, it helps to realize that if you're honest about where you are. For example, one of my areas that I'm working on, and I've been successful in teaching and mentoring others. What I've been told by one boss that I needed to work on, and they try to help me too, attention to detail. Got to be very detail oriented. I have a habit of letting little things slip. So I already know that. That's like an area I'm working on. So to be open, what I would say is, because, I would say in an interview, because one of the areas is attention to detail, I'm working on double checking, triple checking. I would go back to that to let you know that I know what I need to work on, and this is what I'm going to do to become more successful. Now, what I also believe in is that you put yourself into situations where you maximize your strengths. So eventually what happens is your work fits like a glove. It matches your values. You're earning great money in it because you're advancing because you want to be there.
Yep.
And what I also believe is marketing yourself. You asked how do you market yourself? When you have a job, you look for other jobs. You don't have to look for jobs while you don't have a job. This is what so you can kind of pick and choose. I found a wonderful job that I'm getting ready for next year. And the way I found it was, I thought it was in the online position, it was in the live position. And it was a live position in an online thing. I thought it was a good fit. It turns out there was some chemistry in the interview, and I feel it's a good opportunity, and so it's going to allow me to grow another set of skills. Remember, we talked about this too, that if you can take the part-time approach, work in different departments in your company, what that'll allow you to do is to go to management. What do they want in upper-level management?
Fiscal growing unilaterally.
You're growing unilaterally, but you're building yourself laterally. You got it. In other words, if you're going to rise up in a company, they want somebody who's good at conflict resolution, who's good with fiscal responsibility. A lot of the jobs, right? So if you're working towards being a CEO or business owner or something like that, you've got to develop the skills where you know all aspects. What do they do? All aspects of the job. Or they know people who can handle all aspects. So one of these effective leaders and managers, one of the things they do, besides the entrepreneurs who are visionaries, they're able to have a team around them that's supportive, right? And that's specialized, but they're also familiar with the different departments somehow, whether they've worked in them or I've seen it happen. Is that making sense? So the idea is, another approach is you always want to be at a different level than the where you are now. So I already know, talking to my financial advisor, we talked about this, that next year I'm going to be at a different level. It's already in writing that it's going to happen. Now, obviously, your finances can fluctuate. A lot of things can happen. So what this leads to is you have to be able to protect your assets. One of the best jobs I've ever had in retail was Guitar Center. And we talked about how you protect your assets. So I was involved in loss prevention. And from that, what I took was insurance policies. So having insurance policies, a lot of people don't have insurance policies. Protect everything. So that allows you to make some strides forward. Remember what we talked about, appreciating assets moving forward?
Yeah.
Well, even if you buy material things that are depreciating, to buy them all over again to save, like to buy everything all over again takes time. So if you have an insurance policy that helps in case of fire, theft, or whatever, right? Then what happens is those kinds of things help you to rebuild a little quicker. It moves on with your life. You're able to move on with your life. So I think preventative measures help. So you want to grow, and then you want to keep finding a way to keep building. So I already have a plan for next year. I had a conversation with another friend yesterday in the evening, and we had dinner. He said, "What's your 5-year plan?" I already told him the 5-year plan. So it doesn't mean that's what I'm going to be doing in 5 years, but there's an idea that that's how it's going to look. But you've got to be open with the flow of the universe. Is that making sense? So you've got to have the flow. Is that making sense, Walter? Chris, is that making sense?
Yes.
All right. So you've got to have the flow of the universe that helps you to see there's an opportunity here. I hadn't thought about that. Gee, it's showing up. Let me look at it. So even if it's not part of your original goal, go along with it. See it. Like, this opportunity coming up that I'm taking advantage of. So if there's an opportunity that presents itself, and we're going to talk about the martial arts. I'm going to share some strategies about that. So is this making sense? So even if there's something you hadn't thought that you were going to do, if it sounds right, do it. I'll give you an example. There's a colleague of mine who invited me to do a radio show starting in January. I immediately said yes. So I was so excited because we're going to get to interview, if it goes well, which I'm sure it will, celebrities. It's probably going to be a voluntary kind of thing, right? But I'm going to voluntarily do this. But is this making sense that we're going to have a Wednesday night radio show? There are 1 million readers for the newspaper. and then we're going to take some of those readers and make them listeners. That's all. And the coolest thing is, who knows where that could lead? But by saying yes, you open a door. Even if something's free, I used to teach for free. I didn't get paid for teaching. They were scared to pay us at first, right? Because we were new. We were untested. What are internships for? They're trying to grow your skills, but they're trying to do it in a safe environment. So becoming a master chef. Why am I saying this? A master chef. Having an apprentice, working in the best kitchens. So automatically your prestige goes up, working in the top-notch restaurants. But then you have to find out what these people are doing in those kitchens. Okay? Having your own restaurant. Having your own restaurant. You talk about martial arts and training others. Creating your own studio. So working at another gym first, getting the skills, understanding what's necessary to book clients, taking those ideas, adapting them. Obviously, being original, you wouldn't take your own clients. I don't believe in taking clients from one business into another. I don't believe that, right? Let them stay at the gym. That's their client, right? Their clients. You build your own thing.
What if they come to you, though?
I still think that's kind of a conflict of interest. I had a friend who he was in a financial services position, and I was talking to him about this too. This is in another state. I said that's not right to take the finances from one position. Like if they're your customers in one position and that's how you do them.
Because I think about it like this, like something simple, barbers.
What happens?
A barber I was going to for a while. Did my hair great. It was wonderful. Never had any problems, any complaints. And then I get circumstances. I missed them a couple times, and somebody else was there and available, and they turned out to be just as good, if not a little bit better. So then I started going to him.
But notice it's at the same place.
Yes.
Notice you see the difference? It's at the same place. What I'm saying is, let's say that barber quit. Hey, I'm going to open my own barber studio. Why don't you come with me? That's kind of crappy. It's crappy because who gave you the business? Who gave you the business? Now, obviously, the relationships change, and it's okay to network. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is, in education, they do this. It's non-compete. Like they make you sign it in the contracts. You cannot take students from one other college and bring them to another. I would never do that. Yeah, am I making sense? It's like that's their business. They are the ones who have the student. That's their educational prerogative.
And what about teachers?
As far as
taking teachers from one college to another.
Well, when you're getting hired away, it happens.
Say you're at one college, you get another offer. They bring you on, hiring committee, senior member, and you remember the couple of these other teachers that you worked with previously. They're highly qualified, personable, everything they're looking for. I'm gonna go bring them on where I'm at. Wouldn't that be the same thing?
But you're not taking students with you. You're not taking the student body with you to that other college or university. If I'm taking business, if I'm a competitor, I might have a compete clause. There are jobs that I have turned down where they want to make me full-time, but do you know why?
Right.
They said if I make you full-time, you have to quit what you're doing elsewhere. I said I can't do it. So I've had to turn down opportunities after opportunity because I won't stay exclusive, because my philosophy is you will get screwed if you are full-time in one place and you burn all your bridges elsewhere. I would never do that, and I don't recommend it I've been more successful part-time than I have been full-time. This is a very important lesson because it's counterintuitive. And I'm not saying that this is going to be the case for somebody in any other fields. Your fields, somebody in medicine that's a heart surgeon at a hospital, I would say more power to that person. But I would still say if they could do something on the side. There's a chiropractor that I knew, right? I would been going to him for years. He became friendly, And one of the things that he did is he created a software. So he did seminars around that software to help the paperwork and patient intake forms to get more efficient around at different hospitals. He made a lot of money from that. So he had he was showing this is what we're doing to be successful. You can do this too. So what I'm saying is, you always want to have a positive reference, leave on good notes. Like always try to quit before, if you're going to get fired, for example, you want to resign before getting fired. I'm not saying this to you two, right? I'm just saying to anybody listening, always try to leave on your terms to close it out. Always try to give advance notice, try to train, right? And you can get promoted. I've been promoted. There's a huge raise. You can get promoted by quitting the job and getting hired away. They'll understand if somebody's paying you more money. If they're not willing to match, you can leave. But watch the longevity. Look at the corporate culture. But part of success is, how do I build my income? This is what I recommend. I recommend like a 4-star approach. Okay? So number 1, how do I build my income? In my job, through advanced education, right? Senior experience, anything like that. What do I do? What are the top bosses doing? I go to a gym, for example, right down the street, besides LA Fitness. I go to another one. I won't mention the name here, right? But what I tell all the workers to do, they're asking about success. We have these kinds of conversations. I said, you should be studying what the top boss is doing. You need to be looking at him very closely. And what is he doing? We're talking about real estate. We're talking about investments. He already knows. This guy knows. So he became the top boss because he knows what the heck he's doing. So you got to find what the top bosses are doing in your industry. So build your income. What is the pathway? And let them know that you're interested, right? And then number 2 is, how do you build yourself laterally? So I'm a big fan of part-time, full-time, and then maybe doing something online or something where you earn residual income. People write a book, intellectual property, right? A book on cooking. You put it on iTunes, right? Somebody downloads it, you get a percentage, but you market it to everybody in the world. Put it in different languages. Watch what happens. Find something that nobody else is doing. Brian Tracy talks about changing it by 10%. So if somebody's doing something, you're not taking their idea, but you change it enough to where it's not an outlandish idea that is going to get rejected. It's going to still be accepted by someone's subconscious. So a cooking book is an idea. But what you have to do is you have to think beyond what the normal person is doing at your job. Because if you are like the normal person, we're going to stay normal. There's nothing wrong with being normal, but you have your youth. You have your youth, and you can multiply the effects. Remember we talked about this. You guys are in your early 20s. In 20 years, you could have a huge nest egg from what you're earning right now. Now, forget about what you had prior already in your investments. But the time and compound interest in your investments, and that's going to be getting to our next point in just a moment. But first of all, so we talked about building your income, the top point of the star, right? The 2 stars on the side are building yourself laterally, part-time and full-time. And then below, you want to minimize your expenses. Am I making sense? Minimize your expenses and your lifestyle. So I realize that for whatever reason, a lot of people realize it in their late 30s. A lot of people, right? Like I'm catching on more in my late 30s. That you need to minimize your lifestyle somewhere. You can minimize your expenses. Now, this leads us to lifestyle. Because I know people that are rich and then they have material things. And then I know people that are rich and they minimize their lifestyle to become rich. So there's no right or wrong answer, but Dave Ramsey and others would say, live like no one else now. He says, he's famous for saying this, right? That financial expert. He says, and he has a good book called The Total Money Makeover, by the way. I didn't mention that earlier. But he says, live like no one else now so you can later live like no one else. So what he's saying is, isn't that neat? He's saying, don't try to spend all your money now and have everything you want now. Because he said, if you do, you're going to delay your goals of being financially wealthy, right? So I have a friend who subscribed to this idea, and I'll tell you about his lifestyle. So he sold his condo, he sold his automobile, he had one, I think he leased one. He gave all his furniture away to the homeless. He had his clothing in his car at the financial services area, like he kept it. He moved to Brazil, and he bought a house. But he outsourced part of his accounts. He had a contingency fee or some agreement with the managers that handled his accounts and clients. So what he did is he paid some other people to handle his business. But by doing that, we talked, and he would ask me for counseling, and I would get financial advice from him. It was kind of funny. Over a period of 9 years, he took $250,000. And then what did he move to? I think he got to about 1.2 or 1.4 million, if not 2.1 million. I don't remember, but I was there with him every step of the way as he would increase his amounts. But what did he do investment-wise? He would put everything into investments that were growing, but he had money to save and invest. And he would say, I'm not earning that much. He would say, I'm earning 60 to 70,000, which is great. But how did he take that money each year and turn it into that fortune. Now he had $240,000. That's a good amount to start with. So the idea is, you know how they say it takes money to make money? Yeah, that's kind of true, but you have to start saving. You got to start saving. So I'm going to get into some investment, like we're going to talk about investments in a moment, like some ideas. And again, this is not replacing any advice. But one of the things that, there was a blog I read the other day, and I was telling you about this, right?
Yes.
$93,000 this guy earns, and he rents a $400 a month room. Now he's okay not having a house. You can become rich without owning a house. You do not have to own a house. Why is it that people talk about owning a house? I'll talk about it in a moment. But he saves $46,000 a year. He's almost saving 50% of what he earns. But actually, he is saving 50% of what he earns. So the thing is, if you're earning about 50% of what you earn, you're doing very well. Because look at this. If he saves and invests $46,000 over 30 years, that he's saving well over $1 million. I mean, 1.2 million or so. Am I making sense? So already the amount that you're saving is the amount that would help you into retirement. Now we got another threat. What is the threat? In 20 years, the research shows that yes, inflation. So what's that going to tell us as far as inflation? $1 now?
It just tells us that our money is going to be worth less.
Okay, so in 1 year, what's it going to be worth?
Inflation about 96 cents.
Okay, yes, it's dropping about 3%, right? There's 3% inflation. So in 20 years, Walter, do you know what that's going to be? 54 cents. So here's the problem we have. So you're saving for retirement, and now you have inflation. Now let's say somebody retires, and they're going to live for 20 years. That money that they're saving, or that they have set aside,
20% less.
or 50 now exactly. Now it's going to be worth 54% cents 20 years later. Is that making sense? So isn't that funny? Like how you could have $1 million, or $2 million, or $3 million saved up, and then it's worth half the amount, a little more than half the amount, 20 years after that.
So that's why when you invest, you plan for that. You
Yes.
have to. When you have savings accounts, CDs and whatnot, you have to find accounts that deal more than, whose interest rates are more than the current inflation rate.
Yes, so say more about this and the ladder approach you were telling everybody.
For the most part, ladder approach is...
Get closer so they can hear you.
Ladder approach, I read one in Forbes magazine and had a few investors themselves tell me about. Basically, it's for CDs, which is certificates of deposit, in case you know what they are. You basically invest at intervals, 6 months, a year, 2 years. So it works out. So every 6 months, one of your certificates comes in maturity, in which case you can take the interest off the top or just reinvest it and continue on that. The base amount most people invest, they tell you $3,000. So the base for any CD, 500 is the minimum. So 500 in the 6 month, about 1,000 in the 1 year, and 1,200 in the 2 years.
It's wonderful. It's a great idea, isn't it? Thank you for sharing that, Chris. And I've invested in CDs before as well. Walter, any thoughts on that?
I don't really have any thoughts on it. Like, this is all new to me, so like, I'm the rookie here. So if for any listeners or viewers who have no idea, I don't have any idea either. So this is all just like a sponge right now. I'm taking notes.
All right, so very good. So Warren Buffett talks about index funds. So one of the things that he talks about is following the index of the market. So if we put in money, and the thing is, if you have a financial advisor, they could be taking a % from your portfolio every year. So as you grow your portfolio, financial portfolio, they can get a management fee, right? There's another option. You could pay a certified, financial person, a CFA or certified public assistant. I can't believe I'm CPA, right? We could say a certified
public assistant.
Yes, or accountant. Sorry. So the idea is that we can have an accountant that helps us, and we can pay them for their setting up a plan. All right. And we can have them set it up, or we can have a person at a bank. Or I like having somebody at a bank that I can meet with. Now the problem is, a lot of financial books. A real good book that I recommend is called Personal Finance for Dummies. I love this book. Personal Finance for Dummies by Eric Tyson. So he covers all the financial terms, and there's a lot more that you can go into. And he basically says that in Personal Finance for Dummies, you basically, if you're paying a financial advisor, right, or somebody through your bank, what you have to understand is that these people might be getting commissions for recommending products. They get paid based on promoting a product. Yeah, so you got to be careful because you don't know if that's legitimately in your best interest. So you always want to do research before you go with something.
For most banks, I tend to shy away from the savings accounts anyway because you are earning next to no interest on anything like mortgage rates, car loans, not car loans, mortgage rates, equities, and really any kind of savings account in the bank. I haven't seen anything higher than 2%. In my experience, credit unions are
Okay, and why is that? Tell everyone.
higher interest rates. Higher interest rates on your savings. So with that 2%, you're not even breaking market inflation. So you're still losing money on top of the money you're already losing because of inflation.
So this is a very important point. So as far as investments go, we talked about the index funds, putting money there, right? Brian Tracy talks about putting $100 a year, $100 a month, every month, times 45. He says within 45 years, I think he says 45 years, that you can get over $1 million if there's 7% interest or so. But what I recommend is putting in $1,000 a month, or at least $1,000 a month, or $2,000 a month. Getting to that point where we're maximizing what we're putting in. Think back to the guy who's earning $93,000 a year. What is he doing? He's putting in $46,000 a year in investments. That's excellent. So is everyone clear that?
If I may. Let's that figure just threw out. Let's tailor this to our demographic here. Recently graduated college students who are just starting to climb the corporate ladder.
Okay, so what they say, there's a book called Rich Like Me that I recommend. It's called Rich Like Me, or Rich Like Them. Rich Like Them. And there's another one called The Automatic Millionaire. And Brian Tracy also talks about these kinds of ideas too. You want to take 30% of your paycheck. I know how crazy that sounds. Am I making sense? 30% of your paycheck and invest. The reason is if you get used to living on less and you still earn more, then you can, and one financial expert I talked to said you stabilize and fix, you fight Parkinson's law, essentially, we could say, because you're stabilizing your expenses. Am I making sense? The problem is when people earn more, they don't save more necessarily.
Because you fall into the trap of thinking, since I make more, I have more to spend.
Yes. So now I'm past that thinking. Now I'm done with that thinking because you get all the material things that you need. You've already built yourself up. All these things. So now what are you looking at? At a certain point, this is not maybe where a recent grad is, but you need to be thinking for retirement, family. What can I do to protect everything? And so everything is going into experiences, investments, education, those kinds of things. The challenge is a lot of people pull loans. You should never have a car loan, for example, and a school loan. What are a lot of people doing? You said recent grads, they have a car loan and a school loan.
Which is the exact same boat I'm in.
But what I'm saying is, it can be harder when you don't have two incomes, and you really got to set your life up when you're with a significant other, or you're living off one income. If something happens, you can handle it with the other income. But you always want to minimize one debt.
So when you're with a significant other, you
want to live off one income.
So if something happens, then what?
You're protected with the other income. You're investing the other income, you're still doing stuff with the other income. But you got to make sure that other income is there as a fallback. But what people are doing is they're people in a household earning two incomes. Something happens and they're screwed because what? They're living off their entire lifestyle in that manner.
Okay, because those two incomes, that's what they're basing their expenses and everything on.
And they shouldn't do that.
But if you only have one, then okay.
Yes. Just like somebody says, well, I earn this amount, so this is the kind of house I can afford, right? Yeah, that's a dumb idea because it's going to strap them a little bit, right? But they can do certain things where they can they can realize, okay, I can buy a cheaper house, fix it up, or flip it, and then maybe use that as a down payment
So
on
live
it.
below your means.
You got to live below your means, but you can still build your lifestyle. Is that making sense? I mean, I'm all for building your lifestyle. I've done it where I say, oh, I want, I'm going to envision the lifestyle I want. But what I'm trying to say is, if you do that so soon and you're constantly using that where you're not saving, now we have an issue. Am I making sense?
Yes.
So, for example, I would not have bought a pool table like 10 years ago. But since if your house is paid off and all these things, right? Then it's okay to buy a pool table. But you never would buy these other little things before your main objective. To take care of your main objective, the car's not as important as the house. If you have a house payment and a car payment, now this is interesting. A lot of people say, which one do you pay off first? You have to look at the interest rates and how are you getting penalized for hanging on to them. The way you got to think of loans is debt. They're debt. That's like credit card debt. You got to blast out these loans. So I believe a good chunk should go into paying off the loans. Yes, there are tax advantages in certain cases for certain things, right? But pay off your debt, any liability that you have, that frees you up to invest. When you have zero debt, right, then what happens is no loans, no mortgage. It puts you into a situation to where, what do I want to do? What's the next move? I think I want to save and get another advanced degree.
You'd be 100% assets at that point.
You are, and then the assets, remember the house we're talking about is still could be going down in value. Like Robert Kiyosaki talks about, the house you live in isn't necessarily an asset. Right? I mean, if you had to cash out of it, you might take a huge loss in it.
With depreciation.
Yeah, my home I lost a lot of it. But I'm not worried yet because I'm not trying to sell it. I don't need it for anything. I don't need the value of my home anytime soon. So is that making sense? So this idea of I don't know about you guys, but for me, I have one vehicle, a nice vehicle, and I love it. You understand what I'm saying? I don't need another vehicle. I don't need anything else. Why? Maybe when I retire, I can get a sports car again or something like that. Does that make sense, guys? So not wanting much and then really rewiring, because a lot of people in our culture, what do they want? I got the paycheck, right? We were talking about this. Friday rolls around. What do? They go to the bars and blow it. Go to the casinos and blow it. Blow it on only Christmas presents or other presents. But what I'm saying is, what's wrong with paying yourself?
He is not advocating being stingy around Christmas.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that, but I am saying what I am saying is I've seen people go into debt for buying Christmas presents.
Yes, it happens all the time.
That's just great. That's insane. Why would you go into debt?
I mean, we hear people all the time.
What happens?
You just hear people all the time. Just after the holidays, I am strapped. Half the bills are not completely paid off, and they're just kind of in a somewhat bad spot.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's terrible. I'm stingy.
Okay, thank you.
You get a hug for Christmas.
Walter, any thoughts on that?
He got his hug already, so. He got his hug already, so. Good?
Anyway, for Christmas, I don't really go all out either. I could sometimes, but other than that, I don't really worry about giving gifts or anything like that. I don't think that's what it's about. And I don't worry about it. I don't stress myself out, trying to buy gifts and go all out and stuff. I may decorate the house, I may go somewhere, I may cook or something, but that's about it. I'm pretty steady. The only thing I really go out for, maybe sometimes is my birthday, but that's because I'm treating myself. That's really about it.
Excellent, Walter, and thank you, Chris. I think what is very important about this, guys, is to know that you can still splurge, but we got to be responsible about it. I've had students come to me that said, I want to quit smoking, and they wouldn't quit smoking. And I had one online student. I said, do you really want to quit smoking? He says, it's so hard, Professor. I said, is it so hard that you're blowing $2,000 a year on cigarettes, smoking cigarettes? I said, you could go on a vacation. He says, you have a good point there. So we spend money on what we value. You spend money on what you value. So if you buy professional gifts for other people, they're tax deductible, like $25. So there's smart business expenses you can make. Giving like after interviews, or if you something like that, you can send like a thank you note. But then if you were, where you feel it's appropriate to give a gift card, not that you're influencing a hiring decision, or maybe after training somebody helps you. Hey, thank you. I sent something to HR like a nice big Starbucks card before for the staff there at one position. So
You can write those off.
well, you can write in certain cases a professional gift. You would have to talk to your tax accountant to see the specifics. Up to $25 like per person that you give the gift to. So I mean, it's amazing. Yes. So those are the kinds of things that you can do based on your 1099, like if you have your personal business or your professional business that you're creating on the side. So for example, martial arts stuff. Chris is starting his martial arts studio, and he's giving a promotional packet with the martial arts DVD. He can write that off. He gives them to different vendors or different people at different fitness exposés, or just basically you can write off up to like $25, or certain things even beyond that are business expenses. Any material used to train you, any training programs in martial arts, deductible. And that's how you grow your business. Because he's growing it because he's reinvesting in himself. But you have to take it off the ground. I've met some amazing people over the years that they do. It's amazing. I had some personal trainers. They struck out on their own. They left a secure job at LA Fitness, where they wanted to rebuild their studio or do something. They rented space and made it happen. I know somebody who went to a park and had Saturday classes and charged people. And there's no studio space. I mean, I've seen it in Hawaii. Went on vacation one time, and I used to live there. It's funny. If you guys have been by Ala Moana Park, if you've been out there are people doing Tai Chi. There's somebody leading like 30 people in Tai Chi exercise. They're probably getting paid. You could get paid in an open area. You might have to check about permits, but you can be so creative. Another way that people are getting money too, just being creative, is they're marketing their services through presentations, YouTube clips, audiobooks. So you can package what your expertise is and make money on it. But anyway, let's get back to the investment vehicles. So dividend stocks are very good. It looks like dividend stocks. So you can pick stocks and they can go up with a strong performance. I find that the stocks that you look that are very strong performers, like GE, right, is very good. There are plenty of other stocks. Well, there's some mutual funds that have the dividends. Am I making sense? So they have a mutual fund that has the dividends of top performers. They can pick them out, and then they can have people basically choose that one, right? That mutual fund, and you're getting those stocks within it.
Now,
So that's
for the audience, what are mutual funds?
okay. So mutual funds are essentially, and this is great. So can you see this, Walter? So you're taking a collection, right? For example, of stocks, or there are different kinds of mutual funds, right? And you're looking. So you can say index funds, right? So you're looking at the market performance and kind of bundling that up. There's a mutual fund that I have that's part of the BRIC nations, the emerging economies, Brazil, Russia, India, and China. What you're doing is based on criteria, you're picking certain performers, certain stocks, you know what I mean? Certain companies that you think are going to do a certain thing, and then you kind of have like things allocated to that. And so what you're doing is you're getting investors to back up that mutual fund in a way, and there are a lot of financial advisors you could talk about this with, right? But the idea is that you could buy directly and buy a stock. What a lot of people suggest doing is buying directly and getting the stock. So for example, if you buy Facebook, you could buy it through someone. You could buy it online through E-Trade, Scottrade, all these things. I looked at my financial portfolio. Amazon was 38%. I picked certain stocks without an advisor. I mean, I talked to one advisor about Facebook, but I made some money from picking certain stocks like Amazon, Facebook. These are strong no-brainers, Apple, and they all went up. And the thing is, to have the steady growth is what you want. It's better to stay steady. But they said what you were saying with the ladder approach. You want to scatter out your risk. If you're older and you're closing in on retirement age,
If you want to conservative.
Yes, you have to.
And of course, when you're young, you can afford to be more aggressive because you can take those large hits because you have the time to make up what you lost.
Yes, that's exactly it. Did you get that, Walter? You said it perfectly. So that's exactly it. So the idea is, and using your ladder approach that you spoke of, you want to make sure you're scattering the risk and that you don't need the money right away. You don't really have to. See, if you can get used to the idea of investing and I don't need it right away, then you can grow it at a quicker rate. You're not touching it, you're not messing with it. So the nice part of dividend stocks, or if you invest in them, or a dividend, like a mutual fund with dividend stocks in them, is like I'm doing now for next year, is that I'm putting money into it and it's reinvesting itself, and you buy more shares. My financial advisor explained that. So regardless of where it is, and she showed me the performance chart. So it could get 9% next year. The year before it got 23%. So you want to get the low number. You want to find out the low number over the history to kind of use that as a gauge. There is no telling because it can go negative. But the idea is that it'll bounce back if you have the whole term. And this is why a lot of investors, they get panicky, and I've been guilty of this, and they get out too soon.
That was actually my next question. That if a stock starts one of your stocks starts performing less than admirably, do you pull out immediately, or do you try to ride it out?
You don't. If you don't need the money and you don't have a lot there, then you can stay and ride it out. If, for example, I pulled out with Facebook, I got panicky. I bought it at $42.50. It fell down to $25. I started getting panicky. I felt guilty, but then I pulled out and then I came back in, and I'm glad I came back in. I put in money because it went to, and I think it's at 75 last I checked. So what I'm saying is, it can be scary to see the cycle, but a company like Facebook is so strong, it's hard for it to go bankrupt. Now, if there's unethical management or something's on the red, I would say be very careful, and you might want to talk to a financial advisor about that. But if you're looking at Coca-Cola or something strong, GE, right? Look at what happened with Ford. Ford took a beating, and if people had kept their stock there, I mean, they were getting worried because the stock plummeted.
Ford didn't stabilize until a couple of years ago.
Well, it was going in cycles. If you look at the stock chart from 1979 until like a few years ago, like you're saying, every 10 years it was kind of dipping low, to around $2. And what you want to do is you want to find out when it dips again to $2, because it goes to 16 also. But a company like Ford is not going to go anywhere, hopefully. So when you're investing, if you're investing in strong companies, you're not as worried. You're not speculating and throwing away your money on some get-rich thing. What does Warren Buffett do? He didn't invest in any internet stocks, he said, because he didn't understand the internet. He said he likes to, people said, you're not cashing in. He says, I invest in what I know. So it's kind of interesting. So I've used this approach. So why do I like Apple, Facebook, GE, put your money in there. Now the stocks are just like something for play. I use the mutual funds, and I use this more for retirement. Because if you don't need it now, you just throw it off. We just can we show them in the camera? We need to have them
Frozen.
We need to. Yes, we'll have them. Those characters show up. We'll ask them if they can show up on YouTube. All right, is that making sense, guys? So dividend stocks, mutual funds, CDs you mentioned. Checking accounts are important, but what a lot of people are doing is throwing money in a checking account, and it's important for expenses to have access to 6 to 8 months of your money, right? But what my financial advisor explained to me is a lot of people feel comfortable with a low amount of money. You understand what I'm saying? Or a high amount of money. And you've got to have that set point. But remember, if you have a large amount in your checking account, you're not using it to make money that you could be. So for example, let's say you took $50,000 and you put that in to a mutual fund, like I told you about, that might earn 9%. You're predicting that it might earn 9%. You don't know, but there's this idea based on the performance, you're kind of hoping with the market conditions that you're going to earn 9%. That's $4,500. You understand what I'm saying? That's $4,500. So what happens is, if you have a part-time job where you're earning, let's say, $30,000 or $24,000 at a part-time job, then you start seeing, well, if I just earn $4,500 in this way, what would I need to earn? And you start getting an idea of what your retirement's going to look like. Am I making sense? So, in other words, your money is starting to work for you if you can create a way. Imagine if you lived off $4,500 a year. You could retire almost. I'm not saying you would retire, but you know, making sense? So you've got to get to this idea where, hey, the more that I'm hanging on to that's not doing anything for me, I'm not working it in the market. But we mentioned real estate. You mentioned real estate. So, and you mentioned the total portfolio.
Yeah.
Some people do real estate 20 to 30%. right? Their investments 20 to 30%. They have their income from their job 20 to 30% or more, and so then they have some other things. So, and then when you have Social Security, that could be one. But the idea is then getting to retirement. Retiring early is not a good idea. A lot of people say it is. It balances out if you live to a certain point, because one person explained in another video that they tax, if you retire early, like 50 cents to every dollar or something, they 50%. They tax you at a higher rate because you retired early, and you're not getting as much. If you can live longer, right, and hold off on the retirement, you're going to get a bigger return. So the idea is you want to act like Social Security is not going to be there. Does that make sense? So people have 401ks. You want to max out your 401k. You want to put money into your investments. You want to understand what you're getting into and minimize your expenses, build yourself laterally, and increase your income. But build your lifestyle too, but understand, the more you spend now, like if I do I need another shirt like this? No, I don't. I can hang on to this. I have a 30-year plan for a lot of what I own. The pool table is 30 years. It better last for 30 years. Am I making sense? So you buy high quality stuff, and then the thing is, you hang on to it and try to minimize what you need to buy again. You talked about consumables, remember? Consumables, Brian Tracy talks about them. That's a good business idea because people constantly need things. Starbucks, you have to keep going to Starbucks. You have to keep going to Starbucks. People are going to keep paying you because they need to eat. And the idea is that it's interesting, so it's just something to think about, like a vehicle. Can you hang on to your vehicle for 30 to 40 years?
Take care of it.
There you go. And then you're going to be rich faster. That's the idea. So also another thing is they say you need about 60% of your pre-retirement income. That you're going to live off 60% roughly of your pre-retirement income. Some figures vary. But in other words, that's what you'll need. So if you were earning $200,000 a year, you would want to learn how to live off $120,000. Am I making sense? Based on your savings, and you would want to adjust your lifestyle so that when you're not working, you're not bringing in as much, even with Social Security and your investments, that it can become a little easier. Also, with the way that you're getting taxed to earn, to live off less. What I'm saying is, if you can adapt your lifestyle to your retirement income, it's easier. So, guys, we're going to pause it here. And we'll come up with another video clip. We want to thank you all for watching. Walter, Chris, and Sanjay. Let's say hi to everyone. Again, thank them.
Thank you for watching.
Come see us again.
All right, thank you so much. We hope you picked up some valuable ideas.